I want to talk about what happened today with Governor Tim Walz, soon to have been the next vice president, which I'm glad he's not, and some of the things that he's saying about federal agents being in Minnesota and how he claims they're not law enforcement. Well, I don't want to be one of those people who talk about Civil War like it's a just throwaway conversation or a topic, but when he is escalating the idea of civil war. And when he's escalating the idea of federal agents being the enemy and a protest, and even the governor of New York is like, these are not law enforcement. Well, they are law enforcement. Anything federal, we are in a federal society that has states, and everyone has to abide by those federal guidelines. So you can't just simply tell citizens that these federal agents are not law enforcement because they're law enforcement. They're federal law enforcement. And I talk to a lot of people, even my friends who are black, which I know is kind of a funny thing to say because everyone says, black friends. But they were saying, like, yeah, they're conditioning us for civil war. The media is conditioning us for civil war. Governors and all these elite politicians, they're already in a civil war, and they're just waiting for people to light the fuse. If you honestly believe that federal employees, which are our countrymen, you are not fighting a domestic group. You are fighting our own countrymen. And when I mean fighting, I mean pulling a gun on them at a protest. Then it's exactly what they want, the Tim Walzes of the world, or the governors of northern states like New York. They're wanting to incite violence by saying law enforcement is not law enforcement, which is it's 2026. Everyone knows law enforcement is law enforcement. The breakdown of society will happen when law enforcement, local police do not answer calls in certain neighborhoods, white neighborhoods. Oh, you call the police, you wait 9 hours, 10 hours. Oh, it's happened to me. When my car was broken into 3 times in Nashville when I first moved back in the great state of Florida, yeah, I mean, one time, 8 hours, next time, 9 hours. One time, I waited all night and they never came. And that's something that is just happening as a bias towards average everyday Americans. I want to talk about Pacifics in Nashville and how the anti-police movement and the defund the police movement is so strong. When you are driving down the road and there is a black individual who has temporary tags that are expired, one headlight out, and is texting with their phone up like this, trying to incite cops to pull them over. And it happens every day. What they're doing is they are inciting law enforcement to prosecute them, to pull them over, to tell them that they're breaking the law, which means, excuse me, sir, your headlight's out. Excuse me, sir, your tags are expired. No texting and driving. That's state law. Then once they incite the police officer by doing something like, yo, man, don't, like, you're only doing this because I'm black. No, he's breaking 3 laws right there. Then that's when the police do not pull over African Americans in Davidson County because they are specifically breaking the law to incite a reaction out of law enforcement. When they incite a reaction out of law enforcement, that's when they can sue law enforcement. So if there's a African American being pulled over, excuse me, sir, registration. Oh, your tags are expired. I'm gonna have to give you a ticket. Oh man, don't mess with me. You're just doing this because I'm black. No, you were texting and driving. And when African Americans text and drive, they do it in sight of the police officer, phone held high like this, so that the police officer can notice them, and the African American or the black guy knows that he cannot be pulled over because the Davidson County Police Department is afraid of being sued. Yeah, and they don't want to get sued by a black individual because of like the whole, infringing on their rights. The reason why this is important, because when you go to Sumner County, Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, completely different police department, completely different set of standards, and they will pull down everyone with a light that is out and a tail light that is out. And the reason I say that is it happened to me. I got like $275 ticket from Millersville back in, I don't know, this was like 2022. But what that does, if you think segregation is not happening in America, it segregates Black people within Davidson County. Because the moment you go into Hendersonville or Goodlettsville, you will get pulled over for that expired temporary tag, headlight out, tail light out, or texting and driving. So when Black people say, oh, we can't go into this neighborhood because there is law enforcement that is like anti-Black, no, what they're doing is they're enforcing the law, and you have broken the law and you go past that county line and you get a ticket. And that's what further segregates African Americans in 2026. They stay in their neighborhoods, they stay in their counties, they do not pass their counties. And I was in Knoxville yesterday, and there was a guy who said when people text and drive, they do it like this, they do it underneath their car so that the police officer doesn't see. But I was like, no, they do it like this. They do it in public because that's what I see in Nashville. And it's always Black people trying to like incite police officers to come and pull them over so that they can eventually sue. And that's why African Americans who believe they are not segregated are segregated, because liberal police departments versus non-liberal police departments. Them wanting to abolish the Davidson County Police Department compared to Sumner County, where there's more police officers than you know what to do with. They sit like this, you know, end to end, talking to each other because there's just so many police officers and so little crime. And then we also can talk about parts of Davidson County that have such high capitalism that polices they're just not necessary. Places like Green Hills and Forest Hills, or the police department is just never called because everyone has so much money. There's no crime, only white collar crime. And this comes from someone who I know who worked for the police department here. He was saying that the only crime that happens in Green Hills is like domestic violence, but it's not grab and go. It's not theft. It's not shattering windows. There's a lot of different types of white collar crime that happen, but it's not, you know, someone getting mugged. And that is another thing why it's good for people to be individually successful instead of relying on the government. So we need to go back to other parts of Nashville, like Forest Hills, like Franklin, where the police department has a different approach, more of a surveillance. There are cameras on poles in every single stoplight. And you know what that reminds me of? Good old China. When I was in China, 2024, November, their entire police station operates via cameras. And they send you a ticket in the mail if you're going too fast. You know, some can argue that the RoboCop approach is very valid, but also here in Davidson County, Rivergate, where I grew up and close to where I currently live, they do the RoboCop approach where they will not show up for 8 hours if you say, hey, my car got vandalized, but they'll put one of those tiki poles with 6 cameras that every 5 minutes says, warning, you are trespassing, you are being recorded. So they want for people to feel intimidated by these cameras that have solar panels, you know, in neighborhoods that I believe were top notch, like Rivergate Mall, you know, the Sam Ash area, former Sam Ash area, and all of the like Books a Million areas. They're all just littered with those surveillance, like where there's someone being paid to monitor. And what are they going to do? Send someone out and like tell them like not to be in the area if they look suspicious. That's also why panhandling has gone out of control, not just in cities, but I drove all the way to New Mexico last year and Chicago and Florida twice. Every time I come in Davidson County, that's where you see the panhandlers. It's really just a non-tough on crime, you know, method that they're using towards people. It's a very liberal mindset. And the homeless here run in gangs. There are so many times that I've seen 5 or 6 homeless people taking their earnings from the day and just like divvying it out amongst themselves. So they all panhandle, they all put their money together, and they all divide their profits at the end of the day. And that's why I call it a gang. And then they definitely do not buy housing with those profits. And you know what they're probably buying. So those are just some of the issues. But what I wanted to say is the average citizen not being able to trust their governor by saying federal agents are not law enforcement, not being able to trust their local law enforcement because they don't show up, and making you suspicious of every institution that is supposed to protect us. That is not the America that we should live in. We should be able to trust our law enforcement. We should be able to pick up the phone and they're there. And we should be able to notice the differences between, like, not good cop, bad cop, but a cop that his hands, no pun intended, are not cuffed. So I also want to talk about something because I never want to be deemed someone who is prejudiced because I'm not. But I want to talk about Black colleges in America. And the reason I'm saying that is because of the former topic that I have actually, wanted to start with. But instead, I started with Tim Walz. But okay, there are colleges in America that are completely Black. And like, I used to work at Fisk University. I was there for a year and a half. The only reason we were let in as Caucasian was because there were third party companies that used, you know, people like day labor or outside cleaning companies or, metrics, or, if you have your hot water heater go out, they come on campus. But they strictly only hired Black staff. They only hired Black um, faculty. Everyone was Black. Every student's Black. How is that not segregation? How is it not everything Martin Luther King preached against being implemented? And also, how is it legal? Because you cannot have a college that disassociates with Black people or Asians or whatever. Although they tried, when they were doing the DEI. But segregation in America is alive and well. TSU, Fisk, all of them are Black. And I've talked to some people who are white who go there, and they're like one of three white people in a university of 5,000 to 10,000. That is unconstitutional, and it is not what the Civil Rights Act displays. So that needs to be investigated by the governor of Tennessee. It needs to be investigated by the president. Why is there segregation in America? And they're segregating themselves. When I was there, they said things like, only shop at Black restaurants, only shop at Black businesses. Social reparations. I told this a lot. One time I was standing in line at a diner where, because they have the lunch hall and everything at Fisk. And I was standing there, and there was a young man. He was standing there talking to a professor. And I was reaching behind him to get a salad. And the professor told that Black gentleman, he said, stand your ground. Don't let him intimidate you. And he's talking to me, the guy with the tongs trying to get the salad that was like by his left arm. And he was talking about social reparations being not just standing your ground, like standing your ground. Like, what is this? Like a shootout? No, I was getting a salad. But part of social reparations is being rude to white people just because they're white and sitting in front of them or blocking their way. This happens a lot. You're going into a store and there's a Black woman and she just lets the door slam in your face, and she acts like she's going to hold it open for you, and then she just lets it slam in your face. That's social reparations. Black people not tipping. I used to work at a restaurant, and there would be like 12 Black individuals coming, and this little white waitress, she would serve them 12 people, and they would leave her 2-cent tip, things like that. It's not about service. It's about what I heard at Fisk University, being mean to white people, and destroying them in a socioeconomic way is their form of reparations. Also, DEI is reparations, giving Black people jobs that they're not qualified for in order to give them financial benefits that takes away from another race or individual. It's also reparations. That's why when you go to Taco Bell and there's a Black person fixing your food, and it's just complete garbage, or it's not seasoned, or it's misproportioned, it's intentional, because what they're doing is social reparations. They're trying to bring discomfort and sabotage, like, your food because you're white. And it's particularly white men. It's not white women, because white women don't experience it as much as white men. But the racism against white men is because men are the patriarchy, white men control society, white men own slaves. So now, in order to get back, don't tip, sabotage food, and more where that comes from. So the social reparations also, like, I'm in Walmart. This happened 3 times in one day. 6 in the morning, you're walking down Walmart, and then there's a Black lady, and she slings the cart right in front of you in your walking path. And she looks at you while she's doing it, trying to trip you, obstructing a white man's path is also social reparations. Then I went to Publix, and the same thing. There's this lady. She was asking like the woman who was a white woman, her sales assistant, like, okay, where's this? And then I was walking by. She looked back at me and she slammed her card into me. That's social reparations. Anytime. Now, another thing that they're doing for multiple jobs that I've had is they get into a position of power and I'm talking about black women. It's like black women versus white men. They get all of the management positions. I worked at TJ Maxx, and there were 6 women who were in charge, and 4 of them were black. And what they do is they fire all the guys. It's a very sexist thing where you take black women who were the patriarchy of oppression, put them in a position where they fire a white man. It's happened to me like 9 times where there's a white woman who gets fired, replaced by a black woman, and then that black woman goes on a purge and fires every white guy. And that's another form of social reparations. They get into institutions, they get into colleges, they get into different forms of management. And what they do is they take out white men and they fire them. And they get into positions of power to socially rearrange the system where white men are on the bottom, they're on top. And then the crazy thing is the whole DEI initiative was created by white men because they felt guilty and they wanted to throw the left a bone. These are very important conversations because you need to comment if you've experienced them too. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone subscribes to this, but there are reasons where if someone who's African American is being rude on purpose, it's probably reparations. And they taught to do it at Fisk University. And anyone who's ever been to Fisk also needs to comment so they can verify me. All right, guys, let me know you guys think in the chat and see you next time.